Why did Putin call Trump before the US president's meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky? What direction could their further communication take? What is the Western press saying about this? And will Trump be able to get the Russian dictator to the negotiating table? Let's analyze the latest publications and statements and try to figure it all out. So, one of the main topics of the talks at the White House is strengthening Ukraine's air defense and long range capabilities. According to the president of Ukraine, even the discussion of transferring long range Tomahawk missiles to Kiev caused panic attacks in the Kremlin. That's why they hurried once again to put on a show, trying to assure Washington of their readiness for constructive dialogue. Notice that this phone call took place at the initiative of the Russian side. The goal is obvious: to drag out the peace process and disrupt the delivery of military aid to Kiev. Essentially, as the Ukrainian leader emphasized, Putin is behaving no more bravely than Hamas or any other terrorist.
Russia is hoping to leave our part of Europe as an island of danger and abuse of people's lives. It's important not to let that happen. Russia will be forced to stop the war when it is no longer able to continue it. And Russia's true willingness for peace is not in words. Putin has never been short on those, but in actually stopping the strikes and killings. And that's exactly where he has a problem. That's why every air defense system for Ukraine matters when it comes to saving lives. Every decision that can strengthen us brings the end of the war closer. Security can be guaranteed if everything we agree on, especially in Washington, is actually implemented. Thank you to everyone who stands with Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Kremlin propagandists assure Russians that Tomahawks won't affect the course of the war, claiming that if they just beef up their air defenses a bit, all those missiles will be shot down. In reality, these systems make it possible to deliver precise strikes on important military and strategic targets deep behind enemy lines. And shooting down a missile flying at a subsonic speed of about 900 kilometers per hour is practically impossible. Moscow understands this perfectly well. Otherwise, why all the panic? By the way, during a press conference at the White House, Trump was asked directly, "Did Putin try to convince you not to sell Tomahawks to Ukraine?"
Well, what do you think he's going to say? Please sell the Tomahawks. Please sell those Tomahawks. I would be very grateful to you. I really did say, do you mind if I hand over a couple thousand Tomahawks to your opponents? I said that to him. That's exactly what I said. He didn't like that idea.
Also, pay attention to how the Russian dictator acted during his phone conversations with Trump. According to Putin's aide, Yuri Ushakov, first the Kremlin dictator congratulated Trump on resolving the conflict between Israel and Gaza and bringing peace back to the Middle East. Then he sent his regards and expressed his admiration for the First Lady, saying that she shows incredible care for Ukrainian children. At the same time, of course, he forgot to mention that it is Russia that has kidnapped and is illegally holding these minors. And after a round of crude flattery, Putin moved on to his usual threats and blackmail. He stated that supplying Kiev with Tomahawk missiles would cause colossal damage to relations between Russia and the United States. Will this tactic help him continue to drag out the war? Time magazine writes that this trick will no longer work. Trump has long understood who he's dealing with.
Donald Trump boasted for a long time about his warm relationship with Putin, calling him a genius and a wise statesman, and also claimed that their friendship would help him put an end to the war. But in the middle of the summer, it seems that Trump came to realize some truths that other world leaders have known for a long time. For Putin, it's no trouble to talk about peace while simultaneously killing Ukrainian civilians, and the military objectives he's declared leave almost no room for compromise. From a Time magazine article.
In the US, many saw Putin's call as an admission of his limited capabilities, both on the battlefield and in diplomacy. On the front lines, the actions of the Russian army have essentially reached a dead end, and the losses keep mounting. Within the country itself, signs of economic crisis are becoming increasingly obvious. The fuel shortage and industrial decline are felt especially acutely. On top of that, there's the pressure of sanctions and rapidly shrinking budget reserves. Moreover, discontent is brewing even within Putin's own inner circle. Part of the elite has felt the consequences of the protracted war very keenly.
There's one rule in Russian propaganda: if Putin isn't winning, he simply disappears from view. That's one of the reasons why the Kremlin leader almost never visits the occupied territories of Ukraine. It's dangerous to underestimate Putin, but by attributing mythical qualities to him, the West sees the Kremlin chief as more powerful than he actually is. If Americans assessed Putin realistically, they would know that he is a dictator who has staked everything on the failure of the invasion. And Russia is a country with a rapidly cooling economy that is losing its spheres of influence. A realistic view of his power would deprive Putin of his main lever of influence, the sense of his own invincibility. From an article in The Atlantic magazine.
Most influential Western media outlets write that Russia no longer seems strong enough to dictate terms at the negotiating table. The country's military and economic resources are depleted. In other words, right now the West has the opportunity to speak to Moscow from a position of strength. After all, the arguments, including the supply of long-range systems, are there for this.
Trump often complained that ending the Russia-Ukraine war turned out to be much harder than he initially thought. But now, with the administration full of hope after its success in the Middle East, the situation might change. It's also important to consider that the war isn't going according to plan for Russia, whose economy is in decline. And at the same time, Moscow continues to lose thousands of lives without any visible results. From a political publication.
Putin realizes how quickly the West's attitude toward him personally and toward Russia as a whole is changing. The consolidation of the US and Europe is shattering Moscow's hopes for a split among the Allies and a weakening of support for Kiev. A vivid example of this is the 31st meeting in the Ramstein format. Its main outcome cannot be measured solely in money or additional military aid packages for Ukraine. The meeting in Brussels showed that after a period of cooling relations, the US and Europe are once again acting in unison.
If this war does not end in the short term, if a path to peace is not found, the United States, together with our allies, will take the necessary steps to make Russia pay for its ongoing aggression. If we have to take that step, the U.S. Department of Defense is ready to contribute in a way that only the United States can. We remain firmly convinced that the most effective means of deterring Russian aggression are, first, a lethal, combat-ready, and Europe-led NATO, and second, capable and reliable Ukrainian armed forces. They are successfully defending themselves and, in doing so, continue to deter Russian aggression along NATO's borders.
Many international experts believe that Trump's leadership in achieving a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has become a key factor in his efforts to step up negotiations to end the Russia-Ukraine war. The President of the United States knows the weak spots of Putin's Russia. He didn't compare it to a paper tiger for nothing, and right now is the best time for him to force the Kremlin dictator to negotiate a real peace. CNN claims that Donald Trump could become a real contender for the Nobel Prize next year.
Next year marks the 125th anniversary of the Nobel Prize, and Trump could very well have a legitimate claim to it. If the U.S. president can continue to influence Moscow and also shape the outlines of a deal to end the war, a settlement could become possible even before the Nobel Committee selects the laureates for the 2026 prize. From the CNN publication.
Overall, we can conclude that the Kremlin is sticking to its tried-and-true tactic, stalling for time and trying to convince the world that Moscow is ready for negotiations. Putin is still hoping to weaken the resolve of Kiev's partners. That is why their main task right now is not to fall for these manipulations and to continue supporting Ukraine.